special shout out to Ralph Anthony Garcia of the United Ronin Networks at YouTube. Make sure y'all go to the United Ronin Networks at YouTube. Check out his channel. Check out his series, Ralph Reads. Give it a like. Subscribe to his channel. And check out what he got to offer. Some really good stuff up there. This is Mike Mountain, and this message is approved by me. Peace.
Hello everyone, welcome to Ralph Reads, brought to you by TURN, the United Ronin Networks. My name is Ralph Anthony Garcia, also known as R4. The legal, the loyal, the regal, the royal, Ronin Ralph, your master of ceremonies. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Tell a friend to tune in to TURN, the United Ronin Networks. We are Ronin. Today on Ralph Reads, we continue to tread lightly through dangerous terrain, but never coming out looking the same, with none other than Rasheen J. Brown, as we take the second adventure through the eyes of Ralphie's kids. These adolescents prematurely matured. Puberty came after manhood in many cases. To come out clean after going through much dirt means shock will be pasted forever on your faces. Let the reading commence. Wrong place, wrong time. In 1989, on August 23rd, a young African-American teenager became victim to a hate crime that still looms over Brooklyn like no other. That young man went by the name of Yusuf Hawkins. From East New York, Hawkins and 3 other friends had to go to Bensonhurst to inquire about a used vehicle for sale, not knowing that on this actual night, all hell would break out. The young black males walked into an ambush that would forever change their lives and take Hawkins' life as well. The mob's motive for the beating and murder was fueled by the notion that the predominant Italian-American residents thought that the young black youths were dating the females who lived in the Bensonhurst neighborhood at the time of the crime. They were filled with rage and hate, and they took their anger out on 4 innocent black youths. 10 to 30 Caucasian males armed with bats coming can be intimidating, especially when you do not know exactly what the reason is. One of the Bensonhurst youths decided to pull a pistol and shoot Hawkins twice in the chest, instantly killing him. The incident was the 3rd hate crime against black men by the hands of Caucasian aggressors living in New York City during the 80s. William Turks was killed in 1982 on June 22nd in Brooklyn, and Michael Griffith on December 20th, 1986 in Queens. The city was in an uproar due to the heavy racial tension that plagued the surrounding areas. Al Sharpton decided to leave the cavalry to try to end the tension and hardship that many of these residents were facing due to the color of their skin. The two main leaders that led the mob attack, chasing Hawkins to his death, were tried in separate cases. The shooter was convicted of second-degree murder on May 17, 1990. The main defendant was acquitted on May 18, 1990, on murder and manslaughter, but convicted on 12 lesser crimes that did not hold much weight compared to the more serious crime. Outraged and upset with the decision that was heard through the Brooklyn airwaves, the black community decided to take to the streets and protest their distaste of how the case was handled. On June 11, 1990, the shooter that shot Hawkins was sentenced to 32 years to life in prison. The other accused assailants were also tried and convicted. Al Sharpton had planned a march to protest the verdicts that were handed out, and he decided to go back to Bensonhurst to do so. While there, he was stabbed in a school playground. Even though the person was caught and convicted of first-degree assault and sentenced to 5 to 15 years in prison, Sharpton took it upon himself to ask for leniency for the person who attacked him. Hawkins' killer served 8 years and was later released on June 2, 1998 from Attica Correctional Facility. The following year, on January 22nd, Hawkins' father and the guy who murdered him later met where an apology was issued for the role in the hate crime that took an innocent young black man's life. A mural was done in Brooklyn to honor Hawkins, located on Verona Place in the heart of Bedford-Stuyvesant. Many well-known rappers acknowledge Hawkins and paid their respect to him in their songs. Crown Heights is on fire. Just like any black teen living in the hood, you have to be aware of your surroundings as well as other unknown territories that you may come upon. Ralphie's kids were quick to venture out into different environments just because, or just to go on certain mias, not knowing the danger at hand. Or maybe. Racial tension had always been a problem, and being careful was a priority. Either it was your own peers who looked just like you, or Caucasian males filled with hate, or maybe even racist police officers itching to cause harm. The stack of cards were against any black person during this time, just as it is now. Living just to survive is not the answer, so we learn to adapt as well as make sure we do not succumb to the bullshit we are dealt with due to how we were looked at. Being black is sort of like a gift and a curse, and the target has always been on the backs of many, and some still carry it, not knowing what is yet to come their way. 2 years after the death of Yusuf Hawkins, in the summer of 1989, from August 19th to the 21st, racial tension reared its ugly head once more on these beautiful streets of Brooklyn. It would later become known as the Crown Heights riots due to the death of a child of Guyanese descent and another child being severely injured by a motorcade driven by a religious Jewish movement. Lasting 2 days and causing major chaos in the streets, Brooklyn was in a real uproar, and many people got hurt. Residents who lived in that area chose to loot many businesses. Some property was burned down to the ground. Jewish residents that were not involved with the crash were also assaulted just for being Jewish at that time. The Jewish and African American communities were at war, and the outcome was getting out of control. The tension was extra thick. 2 people lost their lives. 152 police officers were injured trying to keep the peace amongst the residents. 38 civilians were also injured, and there were 129 arrests during this time of destruction. 2 weeks after the riots had died down, a Caucasian male who was taken by mistaken identity was killed by a mob of black assailants who thought he was a Jew. It was said that the motorcade that was driving the Jewish religious group was following an unmarked police car that had 2 officers in it, with the lights flashing, indicating anyone watching would be well informed what was going on. The alleged driver that struck and killed the child had lost contact with the unmarked car and had run a red light, trying to catch up to the vehicles that he was following. The Jewish driver ran into another vehicle on Utica Avenue and wound up knocking down a stone pillar, causing it to fall down and pitting 2 children, killing one and injuring the other. The 2 children were cousins. Gavin Cato, the deceased, and his cousin Angela Cato, the one who survived the car accident. The crash happened near President Street. After the crash, the driver decided to get out of his vehicle and tried to save the children that were pinned, but this only made things worse. The residents that lived nearby took it upon themselves to beat the driver until the police came upon the scene. Taking their frustration out on any Jews that were in sight, the black residents turned on attack mode and began assaulting anyone who did not look like them. Nobody was off limits. Even police felt the wrath of the angered community. The ambulance that took away the driver that caused all this was a private ambulance service that did not cater to anyone who was not of Jewish descent. If Gavin Cato would have been helped quicker, maybe he would have had a chance to survive. It was also said that the Jewish driver did not have a valid driver's license, as well as other suspicious inquiries. Being taken away from the crime scene first and allowing the 2 black youths to sit and suffer caused a horrific scene and what probably caused a riot to occur. Many African American residents felt as if the black youths were not given a fair chance and that the Jewish residents were treated better because of their skin color and their involvement in the community. Jewish residents were already trying to gain dominance in the section of Crown Heights and wanted to buy property and move their African American counterparts out of the picture. Jewish residents' homes were destroyed, as well as their businesses, and it seemed like things were getting worse by the minute. The rioting spanned all throughout Crown Heights, and every young person, as well as older, was taking a chance on getting in on the looting and destruction. This gave some of the members of the RALPHIE'S kids ammunition to cause wrecks and run up in many of these businesses and do what they were known to do, which was take at any cost. Cops and robbers. Poverty, crime, violence, harsh living conditions, peer pressure, single parent in the home, not having the proper resources, poor schooling, no jobs, being born in the ghetto, school to jail pipeline, not given a fair chance in this cruel world, police brutality, gang life, learning how to survive in your own habitat, being born black or Latino, the cards already stacked against you mentally. Babies having babies with no sign of direction, welfare, drug dealing, fast cash equals bad results. Nice cars equals being pulled over by racist police. Death. Rape.
3 strikes and you are
out. Judicial court system. When you get locked up, your family will do the bid with you. Remember that. Just remember that.
Consequences,
Right from
wrong,
hoop dreams,
robberies,
rap star,
crooked politician,
nice clothes,
boost in,
trying to keep head above water,
low-income housing,
projects,
everybody trying to come up,
beautiful women having you
jammed if you're not careful,
deadbeat fathers,
baby mama drama,
jewelry,
diamonds,
trying to live the American dream.
without being a target.
Read more, obtain knowledge, defy the odds,
Brand yourself,
believe.
break the cycle.
Just some of the things that many faces living in the hood tend to face daily. Living in neighborhoods where your next door neighbor was once your friend, now growing up and wanting a piece of the pie in any way that it can be obtained, now y'all are at odds fighting to get a buck. That could be detrimental to both. Even in poverty-stricken neighborhoods, one must watch out. Police officers are here to protect and serve. Well, that is not the case for many black and Latino residents, whether right or wrong, who were mistreated because of their skin color. Even now that we have camera phones, it is still documented, but no legal actions are being taken against police behavior. During the year of 1986, 12 police officers from the 77th Precinct in Crown Heights, sits on the block of St. Mark's Place and Utica Avenue, were arrested and arraigned on numerous charges. But one main charge that really caught light was the stealing of drugs from drug-dealing suspects and in return, selling those same drugs for their own beneficial purposes. The dozen cops arrested all pleaded not guilty to the charges. Prior to the illegal activity going on in the Crown Heights Police Department, another group of police officers in a different department at Bedford-Stuyvesant were also dabbling in the illegal activity as well. 13 officers were suspended after an internal affair investigation found out that money and drugs were stolen from local drug dealers. Those drug dealers who were arrested and later told that money and drugs were being taken from them led to the investigation of the crooked police officers. It would seem odd that a criminal would snitch, not just on themselves, but a police officer. I guess some have the mentality that if I go down, then we all go down. No honor among thieves. One incident that occurred with the help of a couple of drug dealers who agreed to wear wire and set up some of the crooked police involved with the shakedown and hand them over to their own department. With his back against the wall and facing major time by going to trial, the suspected drug dealer was able to get 2 dirty cops off the Brooklyn streets. With being blocks away from this illegal activity going on, many teens and adults felt the harsh reality of how the neighborhood enforcers abused their power. Living on St. John's Place and roaming the neighborhood on a daily basis, some members of the RALPHIE'S kids would from time to time bump into these alleged crooked cops and have to be a step ahead due to the fact that they moved in the same manner as them. Everybody was trying to get a piece of the pie. Not to say that these two groups had a friendly relationship, but a cat and mouse effect. And when you have the law behind you, you tend to think you are invincible to a degree. Police corruption was running rapidly during the 80s, and even though some good cops have tried to get a handle on things, you still have a few thinking they are above the law. While the scandal had rocked the 77th Precinct, another situation was starting to bloom across town in East New York in the 75th Precinct that sat on Sutter Avenue in Brooklyn. By not getting paid top dollar for services to protect and serve communities, some police officers took matters into their own hands and decided the next best thing to do was to confiscate from the criminal, not realizing that they were just as bad as the one they were taken from. When you are able to have the law backing your every move, you feel as if you can't be touched. And a sense of power picks you up and you ride that wave until that rush is gone. Basically, like a drug rush, which got you fiending for more without knowing the effects it brings. Some officers were extorting individuals and taking payments for those selling drugs or doing anything illegal to continue their operation, and those officers turned their head as if nothing were occurring. During 1986 till 1992, the officers were living two different lifestyles, and no one noticed or gave it any thought. Being a police officer as well as a criminal can be very tiring. But these officers had a plan, and their operation was running smoothly. Even the Colombian cartel was doing business with these officers. Guns, bulletproof vests, and police scanners were distributed to them by way of the seized items from others that had fallen victims to the officers' doings. Like I said before, there is no honor among thieves, and one of the most notorious police officers at the 75th Precinct went down due to one of his fellow officers ratting him out, and in return, the head of the illegal operation got hit with 12 years on racketeering and cocaine trafficking charges. The informant police officer only received 3 months for the takedown of his partner, saying in return, "I regret I ever met him." The exploits of these actions in the 75th Precinct were so severe that there's a documentary out about it labeled The 7-5, which explains the story from start to finish and how serious Brooklyn was during this time. One of the officers caught in the 77th Precinct scandal, who had agreed to testify against his fellow officers, was found hanged in the closet in his mother's home in an apparent suicide. The pressure of guilt and betrayal probably took its toll on him, and facing jail was a steep price to pay, especially being a corrupt cop and having to spend part of your life amongst those you had arrested or mistreated along the way. During this golden era where crack cocaine had jumped on the scene, the local drug dealers not only had to worry about competition, but also corrupt cops, either extorting them or locking them away for good, or even worse, death. It was about money, and the hood was spewing with it, even though the ghetto was poverty-stricken. Some residents chose to pick their poison, and others took advantage of the opportunity at hand. Being from Brooklyn, or any surrounding boroughs in the big city of New York, or any other large cities during the height of the big drug epidemic for that matter, many youngsters decided to jump on the train and test the waters in order to gain financial status in the streets, and by doing so, went at it full blast. Growing up where hope is not preached to the children of the ghetto, and every time one looks at the hood superstars pulling up to the block with designer clothes or big jewelry dripping from their hands and necks, can easily be painted into the mind of, how can I obtain that? But not really thinking what's the consequences that go with it, and maybe it's easy. Some were built for the street life, and taking penitentiary chances was no concern to them, as well as those that ran with them. Just like watching out for law enforcement, as well as your own crew members, many individuals were getting money and had to watch out for stick-up kids just as well. Stick-up kids did not discriminate against anyone. Rumor had it that some hip-hop legends who walked the Brooklyn streets back in the day were targeted, as well as victims, to the hands of these notorious gun-toting gangsters. Some individuals did not want to put in the work of grinding and selling drugs for a living. Robberies were the next best thing to survive. Some of the members of the RALPHIE'S kids would go on their own Mias and come back to the block not knowing what was awaiting them once they touched down. Stick-up kids lurked everywhere, and for the most part, the New York City transit was extremely dangerous back in the days. You had to protect yourself, as well as your possessions, not knowing what harm was waiting in those train cars. Easy to pull a weapon on someone and take what they have and go about your business. But just like that, having a reputation throughout the streets can also come with a target on your back for those you robbed along the way. Reagan era. When trying to destroy a person or a group of people, you have to learn their strengths as well as their weaknesses and execute your plan. Once you supply someone, in time, whatever you presented them with will be greater, and you can now reap the benefits if the product is good. During the Reagan administration, in the year of 1986, it was alleged that the CIA had involvement in supplying poor neighborhoods with cocaine, in which later on would be turned into crack and eventually start to wipe out families slowly, but at an alarming rate. Not only did blacks and Latinos worry about their neighbors or corrupt cops that shared the same living space day in and day out, but they had to also watch out for the United States government targeting them. It was a horrendous act against people that had no options from the start, and now they had a serious matter plaguing their communities as well. It was said that the money that was being profited from the sale of the drugs was later on in being able to fund the Contra rebels, in which the government or any higher-up ranking officials did not know or approve of the matter. The concept is to target these low-income neighborhoods and supply the dope to the black and Latino residents. Let them sell the product to everyone who may look like them, get them hooked, and watch their lives spiral out of control. Then, while watching the destruction unfold, scoop in and arrest the drug dealers as well as the addicts, all the while repeating the process and using the now incarcerated for personal gain by keeping them in the mental, a new kind of slavery. If the Caucasian addicts get hooked or become dealers, oh well. Even though it was not meant to harm or destroy their race, they are probably considered to be collateral damage. Everybody cannot win in this dirty game. The trafficking of cocaine during the time Ronald Reagan was in office played a huge role in so many families being torn apart and has also been classified as human genocide in the black and Latino community. Even though many investigations were going on to prove this matter, no evidence came about that the CIA or the United States government had any involvement in this act. During the time the Contra rebels were fighting their war, it has been said by reliable sources that the drug trafficking operation was at an all-time high. A former Panamanian health minister took a chance and blew the whistle, and it eventually cost him his life. He was found murdered. One Contra leader also stated that a Colombian drug trafficker was paying the rebels $50,000 to help with a large abundance of kilos of cocaine to be shipped from one destination to the next. A partnership was being formed, and the end result would be lucrative for both parties. The cause of these actions was to sell the drugs and then take the profits to fight the Nicaraguan government. The DEA, Customs Service, FBI, and Costa Rica's Public Security Ministry, as well as rebels and Americans who worked for them, played a part in trying to uncover what was being done right up under their noses and catch the foul play that was spreading from far away and landing on American soil. One of the American informants stated that the drug shipment was flown in on planes and later taken to Contra rebel airstrips and unloaded, as well as heavily wrap and conceal it, only to be later unloaded in Florida State, mainly Miami at the time. Miami, San Francisco, and New Orleans were the main spots that were the destination of drug trafficking. In 1986, on April 17th, a 3-page report was issued through the Reagan administration stating that a Contra operation was heavily involved with transporting cocaine from the year of 1984 till 1985. It was also stated that the United States government paid close to $1 million to various companies associated with the cocaine traffickers trying to carry out assistance to the Contra rebels. Over a course of time, the drug craze swept the nation, and just like that, boom, the neighborhoods of America got engulfed in the genocide and destruction. Children, as well as adults with no other means of making money, were easily introduced to the drug of choice, which happens to be cocaine, which was classified as a rich man's drug at one time or another. Later on, it became the poor man's drug known as crack throughout the neighborhood. The infamous Notorious B.I.G. once shot out lyrics saying, "Either you're slinging crack rock or you got a wicked jump shot." These few lines summed it up about living in the hood. The drug dealers of that time were mad scientists and did not know how brilliant that cocaine turning into crack would or could shake the drug game up. Supply and demand became the new thing in most of the poverty-stricken neighborhoods, and the drug wave easily found itself knocking hard on many doorsteps. The first neighborhoods to experience the cocaine introduction was the city of Los Angeles, where gangs such as the Bloods and Crips became partners with a San Francisco drug ring. The proceeds were split, and some of the capital, which generated in the millions of dollars, were later funneled to a Latin America guerrilla army backed by the CIA. Colombian cartels and the black neighborhoods of America had first tastes on how this newly found drug would change the world and flip the nation upside down. It was not just Los Angeles feeling the effect. The drug was making its way across the United States, and it finally touched down in New York. Many black and Latino residents felt the brunt blow that cocaine and crack was doing to their families, as well as destroying their already offed up living conditions. Cocaine, which is also known as coke, is mostly snorted through the nasal passage. The effects can be very intense, in which the heart feels like it's beating out of your chest. But it can also bring joy and happiness. It can also lead to death from an overdose. Cocaine is isolated from the coca plant, originally from Peru, since 1860. Cocaine is transformed into a rock-like substance that is usually smoked and offers the drug user a short but very powerful, intensifying high like no other. Once crack formed this ugly head, the widespread ran rampant and dove headfirst into major cities: New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and Miami, in which being by the water and having a pipeline of planes dropping off kilos at the time wouldn't be traced or found out so easily. Young children of the ghetto were going to sleep hungry and tired of being in a dire situation, but waking up with a foreign opportunity awaiting them once they hit the block. Just like that, money was flowing, and these youths, even members of the RALPHIE'S kids, were dabbling in the drug game just to be able to provide not only for themselves, but their loved ones also. It's not that the ghetto is poor, it's just that the residents have poor spending habits, and when you feel as if you don't have a chance in hell to make a difference, not only in your life, but your own kids or family members, you tend to gravitate to alcohol and drugs to ease the pains of the world. Money was flowing like a faucet, not able to shut off water to a thirsty mouth, and youngsters were becoming overnight hood superstars, as well as money makers, in thanks to destroying their own race to get ahead. The drug epidemic not only brought money to those that distributed the drug to these low-income neighborhoods, but the crime and death rate also went up. To protect your product and continue to supply the demand of the clientele, you must arm yourself and defend what is yours. People are losing their lives over the drugs. School to prison pipeline. The American dream is to go out in the world and get a nice job that pays well, drive a nice car, have a family, and make a way for yourself in the world. Reality? This all can be true, but tell that to a child born in a poverty-stricken environment and see what their answer to that is. If all you see growing up is liquor stores on every corner or abandoned houses boarded up, cracked vials on the ground in different colors, graffiti on the walls in different colors, having to worry about your skin color when police are around, or your peers lurking to cause you harm, then maybe a conversation can be had on that matter. Growing up, some children living in urban environments attended school, and instead of some of the teachers trying to understand why their students were acting out, would either inform them that they wouldn't amount to anything in life, or basically just give up on them, knowing in return that the teachers were there for one thing and one thing only: a paycheck. In every action comes a consequence, and if you tend to not get an education, then the next best thing is something that will lead you down the wrong path, unless you tend to find a job, which probably is the best thing, especially back in the day. Running the streets of Brooklyn and causing a wreck, as well as getting caught by law enforcement, could land you in the Brooklyn House of Detention or Rikers Island for the most part. Nobody wants to be caged like a wild animal, but when you take penitentiary chances with your life, 9 times out of 10, things do not always work in the favor of a Latino or a black individual. The system will even lock you up miles away from your loved ones so that it will be difficult for them to even visit you during your bid. Family members are also hit with the same time that the culprit is facing, and everybody loses in the process. The BDC, Brooklyn Detention Complex, originally known as the Brooklyn House to those getting locked up, it's a correctional facility which sits on 275 Atlantic Avenue. The detainees are usually either undergoing the intake process or awaiting trial in the New York City jurisdiction. If a crime were committed on a Friday, you would have to wait until Monday just to see the judge, no matter what the circumstances were, unless you had a badass lawyer. That was not the case for most disadvantaged youths going through that. The infamous Rikers Island, reggae singer Coco T explained it all with his lyrics about this New York City jail, about a youth coming to the States and getting into trouble only to land themselves in Rikers Island and not wanting to go there. Some who have been to Rikers during the time may have looked at this as a sign of passage, of becoming a man, or validation of being somebody, but hearing stories of those who came and went will tell you that this wasn't the right move. Some have lost their lives in this notorious jail, where the living conditions, as well as trying to protect their own life, had been at stake. Corrupt staff, as well as other prisoners, has been the demise of this jail that sat on the island in the East River between Queens and the Bronx. Rikers Island became the temporary housing for some of the RALPHIE'S kids who got caught up in the enticing negativity of the world while trying to survive in the mean streets of New York City. If you were from one of the 5 boroughs or any residence surrounding the New York area and you committed a crime, best to believe you would surely visit the island, no question about it. The island had a bad reputation for its violence amongst the prisoners, as well as the neglect to some of the inmates who were housed in those facilities. In the year of 2013, a report stated that Rikers was one of the 10 worst prisons in the United States. 6 deaths due to inmate negligence have resulted in the city paying out hefty payments to the dead inmates' families. New York has voted to close Rikers by 2026. Crime and violence had always been a major factor when describing the conditions of the New York scenery when explained by residents that have lived on the Big Apple. A place where either you found your own way or you become a sheep amongst the preying, hungry wolves that roam the streets. If caught with a firearm, which is illegal in the state, will carry a hefty jail sentence, which in discussions doesn't really matter when criminals decide to ignore the law and still carry arms to commit whatever crime they plan on doing. Some individuals carry firearms as a means for protection, as well as the criminals to protect what is theirs, as well as protect their own lives. The police force is supposed to protect and serve, but that is sometimes a 50-50 chance deciding on the mood of the police officer assigned to a scene. Police officers cannot be everywhere, and some individuals will not wait for someone to come to their rescue, so they usually take matters into their own hands. New York City always had a gritty and rugged atmosphere, and in the 80s transitioning into the 90s, it seemed like things continued to get worse. During a time of panic, a group was assembled to be the voice as well as a sense of hope for the people. Organized to protect and serve just like the NYPD, but not equipped with guns or bulletproof vests, but with a brute force of soldiers willing to make a change. Curtis Sliwa decided to form a group called the Guardian Angels, who volunteered their time to walk the streets of New York City above and below ground, roaming the mass transit due to the lot of crimes happening mostly on the subway. By not arming themselves and basically using self-defense to take on the role as NYC's own vigilante justice team, the Guardian Angels were trained in first aid as well as CPR, and they excelled in many conflict resolution problems among the residents of NYC. Formed in 1979, February 13th, the group has spread to over 130 cities during their existence and 13 countries worldwide. And their presence is still felt, even though now they are kind of under the radar and not as frequent in the public eye like they once were. To be able to make a citizen's arrest without the authority of being backed by the NYPD and also to not be armed in the process takes a lot of guts, especially when your own life is on the line, not knowing if the person you are apprehending is a violent criminal or even a meek individual who on some instances have nothing to lose and will risk it all just because. There is strength in numbers, and the Guardian Angels have taken on the challenge to combat any and everything to protect citizens not able to fight for themselves. Not only have the Angels patrolled the streets or subways or any other dangerous locations, they have also provided educational programs as well as set up workshops for different schools and various businesses. During the reign of Ed Koch, who at the time was NYC mayor, he publicly stated his distaste of the organization, but later recanted his feelings once he saw an improvement of sorts. The different communities and the public gave praise to the wonderful work that the organization was doing to help the NYPD as well as the citizens to combat the fight on crime and violence in New York City. The trickle-down effect seemed to take its toll on the up-and-coming mayors who will later take office. It is like everybody that is associated with an organization or gang. They have some type of uniform or colors representing them to let the masses know who they are. Just like the NYPD, they're always called the Boys in Blue or the street gangs, the Bloods who wear red, and their rivals, the Crips, who don anything blue. Gangs coming up in the 70s and 80s would usually wear patches with their group's name on whatever clothing they wore. The Black Panthers wore black and armed themselves to not only protect themselves, but also the black communities that the United States shunned upon. Even the racist hate group known as the KKK sports white sheets to hide their cowardly identity. The Guardian Angels are no different with their uniform of choice. They wear red berets and red jackets, or they may sport a white t-shirt with their logos sitting proudly upon their chest area as if they were Superman himself. The logo is an eye inside of a pyramid on a wing shield, all in red lettering. To join this prestigious group, one must not have committed a recent crime or have an intense criminal record that will deny entry into the Guardian Angels. If you are 16 years of age, you have a chance of joining, but just like any job, volunteered or paid, you must go through the ropes and follow rules and regulations. Martial arts training, CPR training, communication skills, first aid, and conflict resolution are some of the procedures that new as well as existing members, aspiring members, must go through to become a Guardian Angel. They are taught that if your life is in danger, use the wisest judgment there is to protect yourself as well as the person you are helping. The Angels have taken their fight to the internet and formed a program titled Cyber Angels, a program that teaches self-defense as well as an outreach community group interested in the neighborhood issues regarding the crime and violence that continue to plague the residents' surroundings. A non-profit group, the Guardian Angels have never demanded money nor asked for any payments for their acts of bravery to help the citizens, all in while others try to take full advantage and impersonate the organization for their own gain and in return solicited money from civilians who were in need of protection. New York City, NYC, being the foundation and birthplace of the organization, later on growing and expanding their membership, have established chapters in numerous places in the United States, such as Washington, D.C., New Orleans, Los Angeles, Chicago, Philadelphia, Dallas, Houston, Toronto, Boston, Portland, London, Tokyo, just to name a few. At the time of all the madness that was going on underground, Al Sharpton was also trying to lead a brigade of his own. Some of the kids in the neighborhood in Crown Heights, as well as other low-income neighborhoods, were given money by Sharpton to watch out for older women on the transit line due to the craziness that took place on a regular basis. RALPHIE'S kids, as well as the Guardian Angels, were both trying to keep people safe, even though the Angels were better trained than the youths that Sharpton used. The young kids would take the payments and do what most kids their age were doing at the time: drink beer, smoke marijuana, and not really paying attention to the job at hand, which was to be a mirrored image of the Angels. During this time, Sharpton was trying to make a bigger name that he already had by forcing his way into the Michael Jackson Victory Tour and being part of something special. Sharpton felt as if the Jackson family owed the fans something due to them having major success. He wanted to captivate on this concert and in return was named to head the tour due to serious boycott threats of the tour not going forward. Don King was the promoter and helped get the venues in the United States as well as Canada. Sharpton was given a budget of $500,000 to take care of the distribution of free tickets during the tour, which was later stated that the money was used to hire the Pride Patrol, the young kids who were picked in the various visited cities of the tour. Some of the funds went toward donations, also stated by Sharpton himself. The Jacksons later claimed that Sharpton was extorting money from the family, as well as scalping tickets for a hefty money return for his own pocket, in which Sharpton later denied. During the time, it was secret to some, but also to others, that Sharpton was an FBI informant, and he had dealings with the Genovese crime family. Sharpton wanted to get into the waste management business, but when that didn't work out for him, he decided to try his hand at the booming music industry. He felt as if it were a dirty and cutthroat situation to jump into, but the monetary gain that one could attain drew him closer, as well as wanting to learn the business even more. Sharpton was eager to make a name for himself and was not worried about stepping on anybody's toes or hurting anyone. One of Sharpton's close associates during the time stated that Sharpton himself would put pressure on the larger music labels as well as certain concert promoters into spending a massive amount of money into the black communities rather than anywhere else. He also threatened to form boycotts and pickets anywhere these companies decided to set up shop unless he was given funds, more like a contribution of sorts, to the national youth movement that he was affiliated with. Tickets to certain concerts would gradually be accepted as payment as well. The movement that Sharpton was spearheading, finances were all in disarray, and Sharpton did not even bother to file tax returns for the organization as well. And no cares were given during this time. "152 police officers." Motherfucking police officers. Or is that firemen? Whatever it is, damn it, I wish it would fucking stop. Damn, why does it have to happen while I record? Listen to that shit. Ish. Poverty, crime, violence, harsh living conditions. You gotta be fucking shitting me. It was quiet for a half hour, and as soon as I click on this microphone, there it goes. Fuck off. Prior to the illegal activity going on in the Crown Heights Police Department during this time, another group of police... What the hell? What in the world was that? Jesus F. Christ, bro. Living on St. John's Place and roaming the neighborhood on a daily basis, some members of the RALPHIE'S kids would from time... God damn it. Bro, fuck you. Fuck you so much. Asshole. Not knowing the effects it brings. I knew that was coming. A former Panamanian health minister took a chance. Uptown train. Why? 'Cause it's loud. Annoying. It'll probably take 2 years before it gets out of here. Growing up, some children living in urban environments attended school and instead... I love it how I'm getting into it and then the train just happens to roar by without any consideration for anybody else doing anything else, whatever they may be doing. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. God damn it. That was not the case for most disadvantaged youths. That was not the case for... It begins. The island had a... One thing I can say about the island, they don't have trains over there. Bahalapantis, a magnetizing, manly musk, hinted with a splash of lightly sweet floral scents that are native to North America. Perfectly engineered to turn heads and tickle her olfactory nerves. No poles are needed when fishing at the pub, but don't forget the bait. Bahalapantis. A 30-milliliter bottle gives you about 600 modded sprays of this new technology to convenience the alpha man in you. Bahalapantis. Get your bottle today. Bahalapantis.